The Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. Around 80 new fragments of the ancient texts have been revealed to the public.
They said the Dead Sea Scrolls were scripture, nothing more, fragile words fading on parchment. But when quantum machines touched their ancient letters, something unexpected happened. Patterns appeared, numbers, codes, shapes that whispered of prime sequences and binary rhythms. These weren't random scratches of ink. They were deliberate, precise, encrypted. And as the AI probed deeper, it found echoes that stretched beyond the desert, echoes of the stars themselves, star maps hidden in scripture, aligning with constellations charted thousands of years ago. This was not just religion, it was science before science. Knowledge guarded, sealed, waiting. The discovery forced a new question into the silence of history. Were these scrolls written only for ancient Israel? Or for us, now standing on the edge of prophecy and revelation? And if they were meant for us, what else is about to be revealed? The desert was silent when the first clue surfaced. A Bedouin shepherd, searching for a lost goat, hurled a stone into a cave near Qumran. The echo that came back was not the sound of rock against sand, it was the sound of pottery breaking. Inside, clay jars lay shattered on the floor, and from them spilled fragments of history that had been hidden for 2,000 years. At first glance, they looked ordinary, faded parchment, brittle as ash, covered in strange letters, but the world soon realized this was no accident. These were the earliest surviving manuscripts of the Hebrew Scriptures, copied by hands long turned to dust. Some contained the familiar words of Genesis, Isaiah, and Psalms. Others spoke of laws, songs, and visions that few had ever read. But the deeper scholars studied them, the stranger the mystery became. Who had written these texts? Why were they hidden in caves? Were they the work of priests preserving holy writings, rebels fleeing Rome, or mystics guarding secrets never meant for the common eye? No one could agree. Every theory opened another question. And the most disturbing question of all remained unsolved. What truths still slept inside the unread fragments? Truths too fragile, too hidden, to ever be seen by human eyes. For decades, scholars worked like detectives at a crime scene. Thousands of fragments, some no bigger than a fingernail, were spread across tables in guarded rooms. They squinted under magnifying glasses, matched edges like puzzle pieces, and argued endlessly over meaning. Progress was painfully slow. Entire lifetimes were spent on a single verse. The languages themselves added another layer of mystery. Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek. Some passages were clear, others so faded they looked blank to the human eye. And in those faint letters, suspicion grew. What if the most important messages were the ones no one could read? What if answers to questions of faith and history were locked inside the damaged scraps? Rumor swirled. Some scrolls hinted at strange visions of light and cosmic order. Others referenced calendars and hidden rituals, unlike anything in traditional scripture. Every discovery stirred debate. Every missing piece invited speculation. Were these texts edited versions of the Bible? Or were they something more dangerous? Writings that might rewrite what people thought they knew about God, creation, and time itself. The deeper scholars dug, the heavier the silence became. It was as if the scrolls resisted being revealed. And then, the silence broke. Machines entered the story. Machines powerful enough to see what no human eyes could ever find.
The arrival of machines changed everything. At first, it was simple imaging tools, multispectral cameras capturing traces of ink invisible to the naked eye. Letters appeared on what scholars thought were blank fragments, words returned from the silence of centuries. But that was only the beginning. The true revolution came with quantum AI. Unlike ordinary computers, it didn't just scan, it learned. It studied thousands of samples, compared styles of writing, measured the tilt of a pen stroke, the curve of a letter, the thickness of ancient ink. Patterns emerged. Dates once guessed at became measurable, accurate to within decades. What once took years of debate now happened in seconds. They gave this AI a name, Enoch, a fitting name, drawn from the man in Scripture who walked with God, and was no more. Like its namesake, this system walked between worlds, the ancient and the modern, the human and the machine. And what Enoch uncovered startled even the most cautious scholars. Two writing styles once thought to follow each other in history, Hasmonean and Herodian, were not sequential at all. They had existed side by side. That meant scribes chose to preserve older traditions even as new ones rose. It was not evolution, it was resistance, a people clinging to memory during upheaval. Then came the greater shock. When Enoch examined fragments from Daniel and Ecclesiastes, it revealed something almost unthinkable. They may have been written during the lifetimes of their authors, not later copies, not retellings, but originals. If true, this meant readers were no longer holding echoes of prophecy, they were holding prophecy itself, preserved in its first breath. And just when scholars thought they had reached the limit of revelation, the scrolls spoke again, but this time in the language of codes. The codes began as faint whispers, tiny repetitions in the text, odd groupings of numbers hidden in the sequence of letters. At first, scholars dismissed them as scribal errors, but Enoch saw something else. The AI traced the patterns, broke them down, and compared them with modern encryption. The results were chilling. These were not random mistakes. They followed strict rules, the kind of order you see in computer code. Binary rhythms, prime number sequences, mathematical structures that mirrored the logic of quantum computing itself. Yet these scrolls were written more than 2,000 years ago. How could ancient scribes have known patterns that modern science only discovered in the last century? And the strangeness did not end there. Some of the sequences aligned with ancient star charts. Constellations recorded in Chinese astronomy matched the hidden structures buried in the scrolls. Were these mere coincidences, or deliberate attempts to encode cosmic knowledge inside sacred texts? Suddenly, the Dead Sea Scrolls were not just religious relics, they were vaults of encrypted knowledge, guarded across millennia. The possibility was unsettling. If prophecy could be encoded in numbers, if the stars themselves were mapped in scripture, then the scrolls were speaking on more than one level. They were history. They were warning. They were a code meant to be broken, but perhaps not too soon. The revelations ignited a storm. In universities and research labs, excitement spread like fire. Historians argued that the findings could reset entire timelines of biblical history. Religious leaders, however, reacted with caution, and in some cases, outright fear. If these fragments were truly originals, if their hidden codes were intentional, what did that mean for faith as it had been taught for centuries?
Some called it a miracle of preservation. Others warned it was a temptation, knowledge not meant to be touched. Whispers of suppression grew louder. Reports claimed certain translations were being kept from public release, too dangerous, too disruptive, too prophetic to be revealed. Meanwhile, Enoch pressed forward. The machine did not care about politics or dogma. It scanned deeper, layering its discoveries piece by piece. Some scrolls, once dated to the Qumran sect, were now proven older, written before anyone ever lived in those caves. That meant the scrolls had traveled, carried across deserts, perhaps smuggled out of Jerusalem itself during times of war. They were not just the voice of one community, they were fragments of a wider story, stitched together from many sources. Each revelation added weight to the same haunting question. Were these texts hidden to protect them from destruction, or to keep them from being read until the appointed time? Enoch's next discovery blurred the line between faith and science even further. As it scanned damaged fragments, the AI detected unusual markings around certain passages, dots, lines, and symbols most scribes had ignored. But when mapped digitally, they formed patterns, and those patterns mirrored astronomical alignments, stars, constellations, solar cycles. It appeared that the scrolls were more than scripture. They were calendars, cosmic maps,
records of the heavens disguised as sacred text. Some fragments even hinted at solar events, shifts in the sun, written centuries before those changes could have been observed. If true, this meant the authors of these scrolls possessed knowledge far beyond their time, knowledge that looked strangely like science wrapped in prophecy. But that raised a deeper, more disturbing possibility. Were these texts only preserving human wisdom, or were they encoding divine revelation, messages planted with precision, waiting for a generation equipped with machines powerful enough to unlock them? The silence of the caves seemed to echo with the question: were the scribes guardians of secrets, or messengers carrying warnings across the ages? For the first time, scholars began to wonder. The scrolls had not simply survived history, they had been timed, hidden until a world of algorithms and quantum machines could finally read them. As the findings spread, the divide grew sharper. Some researchers hailed the scrolls as proof that the Bible was closer to its original form than skeptics had claimed. If Daniel and Ecclesiastes were indeed first versions, then prophecy had not been rewritten over centuries. It had been preserved at the source. To believers, this was confirmation. To critics, it was chaos. But Enoch revealed something else that unsettled both camps. Among the fragments, alternate versions of familiar texts appeared. Passages that didn't match the Bibles we hold today. Slight changes in wording, entire phrases missing, different structures of the same story. Were these early edits, regional variations, or pieces of books that were later removed altogether? Each possibility carried weight. If these were original forms, then modern scripture might be incomplete. If they were variants, then multiple communities carried different revelations. Either way, the foundation of history shook. And then came the questions no one wanted to face. Were there other books, sacred writings that never made it into the canon? Did voices once considered holy vanish from history, silenced by time or design? The scrolls whispered of a wider scripture, a library beyond what the world had known. And now, piece by piece, the machine was resurrecting it. What the AI uncovered next blurred the boundaries between text, code, and prophecy. As Enoch processed damaged fragments, it detected strange alignments in the letters, sequences that behaved less like words and more like encryption. To the human eye, it was Hebrew script, but to the machine, it was mathematics.
Prime numbers appeared in clusters, binary-like structures, ones and zeros hidden in the spacing of characters, pulsed beneath the ink. These weren't random, they followed rules. Rules eerily similar to the encryption systems that protect information in modern quantum computers. But how could writings from 2 millennia ago contain structures resembling technology that only now exists? The revelation didn't stop there. When mapped, certain coded passages aligned with ancient star charts, constellations drawn in Chinese astronomy thousands of years ago. Scholars were stunned. Could it be coincidence? Or were the scrolls encoding celestial knowledge across cultures, hidden in scripture? If so, then these texts weren't just about law or faith. They were a vault, a library of cosmic wisdom concealed in sacred form. The implications were staggering. What if these patterns hinted at a deeper order to the universe? What if prophecy itself was encrypted into numbers, designed to be unlocked only when humanity reached the age of machines? Some called it divine foresight, others called it dangerous fantasy. But one truth became undeniable. The Dead Sea Scrolls were no longer silent. They spoke in 2 voices, one of scripture, the other of code. And if both were true, then the scrolls carried not only the words of the past, but a message meant for the future. A message that could alter history itself, if we dared to read it all. As Enoch's discovery spread, the world outside the laboratories began to stir. Headlines spoke of forbidden knowledge and hidden prophecies. Religious councils demanded caution. Some leaders even called for silence, fearing that fragile faith could not survive such revelations. Others argued the opposite, that truth, no matter how unsettling, must be revealed. The conflict wasn't only spiritual. Governments grew interested. If the scrolls held encrypted systems resembling quantum code, could they contain more? Hidden mathematics, forgotten technologies, ancient knowledge that might shift the balance of power in the modern world. Meanwhile, the scholars who worked closely with Enoch spoke of awe and unease. The AI had no filter, no restraint. It pulled out every pattern, every anomaly, every hidden layer. And some of what it uncovered was disturbing. References to cosmic upheavals, symbols that look like warnings, passages describing events that seem to echo disasters centuries in the future. Were these just the visions of mystics, or encrypted prophecies meant to be unlocked in an age when humanity had the tools and the arrogance to understand them? The more the scrolls revealed, the clearer one truth became: knowledge and danger were inseparable. And the deeper Enoch searched, the closer it came to opening doors that perhaps should never be opened. The story of the Dead Sea Scrolls is no longer just about parchment in jars. It is about prophecy meeting machine, ancient voices colliding with modern code, and each fragment that Enoch deciphers draws us closer to a truth too large to ignore. If Daniel and Ecclesiastes were originals, then prophecy was preserved in its first voice. If the encrypted patterns are intentional, then the ancients hid knowledge of stars, numbers, and cycles that stretch far beyond their time. If warnings lie buried in the fragments, then history itself is not random, it is scripted. But that is the problem. Who is the script written for? For a desert sect in hiding? For empires long gone? Or for us, now, standing at the edge of history, armed with machines that can break seals that were never meant to be broken? Already whispers rise. What if unlocking every fragment is the final key? What if Enoch is not just revealing knowledge, but triggering prophecy itself? Because the scrolls are not finished speaking. Thousands of fragments still wait in darkness. And when the last one is read, when the final code is revealed, the question will no longer be whether we can handle the truth, but whether the truth will handle us.